Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of Shop Talk. My name is Lisa Larter, and I have the privilege today of having a conversation about business and success with my coach and mentor, Alan Weiss. If you have not heard of Alan Weiss before, you are in for a treat. He is best known for his work in the book Million Dollar Consulting, as well as Million Dollar Coaching, and he has a new book coming out called the Million Dollar Maverick. And what I love about this book is it directly can have a positive impact on entrepreneurship, which is why I wanted to interview him and talk about some of the concepts in this book, because I think it can be invaluable for you today. So Alan, welcome to the interview.
Thank you, Lisa. Happy to be here. Nice introduction. I like that.
It's great to have you here. I feel very privileged to be able to do this with you. You are a highly sought out individual, and I'm grateful that I get to do this work with you, and that I am able to connect with you as frequently as I do. And it's exciting to share your knowledge and insights with my audience. So
I'm watching the technology here to make sure my head stays within the screen size. So.
Awesome. That is good. All right. So why don't we start by you telling everyone just a little bit about you? I kind of skimmed the surface in terms of what I know about you, but why don't you let everyone know a little bit about you just to start?
Well, I'm sitting here in Rhode Island. I came here from New Jersey. I'm a New Yorker, basically, if you listen to my speech pattern. And I came here to be president of a consulting firm, which I was for about 18 months, and I was fired. And I decided when I was fired that no one else would ever fire me again because I was going to work for myself. I said, literally, that's the best thing that could happen to me. I went out on my own and started my own company. I had the confidence to do that and felt I could always make a buck, and we'll see what happens. So that was 1985. I wrote my first book in 88. I wrote my second book, my third book, and then my fourth book was Million Dollar Consulting in 1992. Which is just coming out in another month or so from this recording in its fifth edition. It's been on the shelves for 25 years, which is very, very unusual. So along the way, I gathered Fortune 500 companies, about 200 of them. But after Million Dollar Consulting, I found that a lot of people wanted to learn how to be better at entrepreneurialism. And my practice, which I thought would maybe go 80% corporate and 20% individual, eventually went to 99% individual. And so I gained the strongest brand in the world in solo consulting and in boutique consulting. And I've written 64 books, and I've been to 60 countries, and it's been a wonderful life. Some people who got on their own wound up working for a worse boss. I wound up working for a better boss.
That's great. I love it. A colleague of mine, Colleen Francis, is the one who told me that I should follow your work a couple of years ago. And I had heard about you from some other people and had, followed along some of the stuff that you do on your website. And last year when Colleen said to me, when I asked Colleen what would be the best way to kind of dip my toe in the Allen pond, she suggested thought leadership. And, it's a fairly significant investment to come and spend a few days with you at Thought Leadership. And it was definitely worth every penny. I really, really enjoy your approach to things.
Well, it was clear you enjoyed it and you contributed to it beautifully. So I was glad you were there. And this year in Thought Leadership, I have Dan Gilbert, and I mentioned that because he's the guy from Harvard with 15 million TED views who talks about happiness, about synthetic happiness. The broken leg was the best thing that ever happened to me. And that's what happened when I got fired. So his philosophy and mine, very consistent. You make your own happiness.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about your new book, because you're doing some interesting marketing around the book. Happy to say that I have influenced your marketing efforts a little bit with this book, but I love the idea of thinking differently, acting decisively, and succeeding quickly, especially for women. I know one of the things that you have said to me is that I'm overthinking things at times. And I know that as women, sometimes women struggle with self-worth. They struggle with analysis paralysis. And so how would you, what do women need to do in order to be able to, think differently, act decisively, and succeed quickly?
It's going to be the longest Zoom interview in history. Well, let's start with a Maverick approach. I think that too many women are told that they need other women as exemplars. And the fact is, to be successful as a woman, what you need is the same thing that a man needs. You need a great exemplar. And gender is irrelevant. And so men can learn from women, women can learn from men. The fact is, no matter what your pursuit in life, you need great exemplars. So you have a feeling, not to copy them, but what traits and behaviors you want to emulate. So the first thing is, don't be bound by gender. The second thing is, don't be bound by mythology. My experience overwhelmingly in the corporate world is that it has changed hugely in the last 25 to 30 years. And a woman who is affirmative and assertive and strong is not going to be looked on as a bitch, is not going to be called names. She's going to be respected for who she is and for her views in the same way a man would be. Now, are there 5 or 8% of the people in the world who are bigoted and prejudiced and so forth? Of course there are, but you cannot orient your behaviors around those bigoted few. And so I work with the premise that the other person's not damaged. And everybody should work on that premise unless proved otherwise. But if you walk in feeling the other person is damaged or biased or doesn't understand you and so forth, you're going to have a problem because you'll change your behaviors. The final thing that I think women per se should think about is that I find that women are much more malleable. Now, I mean that in a positive way. That is, they learn better than men do on average because they have less ego invested. Now, I'm sure some gender specialists will take me to task for this, but the fact is, we're not talking men are for Pluto and women are from Alpha Centauri, whatever that ridiculous book is. I mean, seriously, come on. But the fact is this. The last time I ran the consulting convention, a very prominent woman nationally said to me, the majority of people you have speaking at your event, whom you choose, are female. No one at your level, she says, would ever put on a program that's predominantly female in the presenters. And she said, how did you think about that? And I said, well, I didn't. I chose the best people. And that never occurred to me until you just said that. And what I have found is that I chose those women when I went back in retrospect because they learn and they don't have egos that they come in with. And they're ready to share. And they're more innovative and they're ready to explore more. So I think women temperamentally make far better consultants. They're much more empathetic and so forth. And they shouldn't be afraid to use these very, very strong skills.
So you talk in your first chapter of the book is called Leaving the Herd. And one of the things that I find women do is, or entrepreneurs in general, is in our efforts to emulate someone else's success, we copy what we think success should look like instead of really forging our own path and figuring out what we should do, what's right for us. How would you advise women to balance learning from other people who have been successful while still carving out their own way to create unique success?
There's a famous quote that says, no one is as conformist as the conventionally nonconformist. And so when everyone's nonconformist, they become by definition conformist. I don't think you march to the beat of the drummer everyone else hears, and I don't think you march to the beat of a distant drummer. I think you create your own music. And I think what women and men have to do is they have to identify traits in others that they can use to the extent that they're comfortable to be successful. I'll give you a couple of examples. If you were to find that people you really respect have gained thought leadership positions by making predictions, whether they're right or wrong, they make predictions, then you should make predictions. If you find that people you respect are very generous and give away their intellectual property and help other people readily, then that's what you should do. So you have to watch those kinds of traits and behaviors, but then you have to adjust them for your own personality. Mm-hmm. So if someone is gregarious and outgoing and they're always the life of the party, but that's not who you are, then that's a trait that you don't take on. So you have to use that kind of judgment. And eventually, you have to become comfortable in your own skin. But there's one very important metaphor here. I call it the Lobster Principle. And that is, a lobster has an exoskeleton. The only way it can grow is by molting. And when a lobster, which is pretty impregnable with the shell, but when it molts, it's highly vulnerable. None of us grow without being highly vulnerable. None of us grow unless we shed that shell. So for a while, we have to be vulnerable. Now, there's nothing there trying to eat us. So the lobster has a bigger problem. But most of us don't grow because we're afraid to shed the shell.
Right. So what is the balance between being vulnerable and building confidence? Because it would occur to me that you need to have a certain level of confidence in order to allow yourself the discomfort of vulnerability.
Well, you're right. That's a direct proportion, though. And so, for example, when I first learned to scuba dive, I took some lessons in this big pool down in the Caymans, and then you go overboard. They take you out, you go overboard, and you're sitting at the bottom, 40 feet down. You're sitting on the bottom, breathing, watching a crab walk by, and you're saying, what the hell am I doing here? You know, I mean, I'm 40 feet away from the surface. What if everything fails? And then you realize that there are a gazillion people scuba diving all over the world, and you've got an instructor a few feet away, and the probability of dying is less than trying to cross Fifth Avenue in New York across the light. So you have to allow yourself to be temporarily frightened or scared or vulnerable to gain confidence. And the first time you fly, the first time you get on a horse, who's the first person who ate an oyster? I don't know. Pretty vulnerable moment. So you're exactly right. Those come hand in hand. And the more that we are willing to be vulnerable every day, getting up and speaking to a large group you never spoke before for the first time, the more our confidence grows once we accomplish that task.
Mm-hmm. I made a decision in January that I was going to learn to run 5K. I have Crohn's disease, and the year, it was probably 1982, the summer between grade 5 and grade 6, I was put on high dosages of prednisone. And I went from weighing 80 pounds to 140 in a 2-month period. And when they tried to take me off the medication, of course, I ended up in the hospital, and the medication caused stretch marks all over my body. And I went from being an athletic kid to one who no longer went to gym class because I was so ashamed of what had happened. And since that time, I've never been athletic. So this year in January, I decided I was going to learn to run 5K. And I have been following the Couch to 5K app, and I've been going out, every week, and I've been running, and I'm 2 runs away right now from running 5K. But one of the reasons that I choose to do things like that is it's relatively safe. I'm not going to hurt myself learning how to run 5K, but I do believe I'm building confidence in my ability to do things that are hard. And I think that that builds character when it comes to other things in business that are hard. Would you agree?
Well, yeah. I mean, as soon as we're done here, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to drive for 10 miles. Because that's what I do when I want to exercise. I get in the car and I drive for 10 miles. I'm working up to 15. I think that...
You're awful.
I was waiting. I know there's a U.S.-Canadian lapse there. And so I was just waiting for it to kick in. I think that when you tackle hard things, you gain the confidence to tackle other hard things. Mm-hmm. But the key thing here is not that you finish the 5K. The key thing is that you try it. You get up to bat and you swing. You can't hit if you're not in the game. But if you get in the game and don't swing, you're not going to hit either. Mm-hmm. So you have to be in the game and you have to swing. Now, if you don't finish the 5K, if a speech doesn't go well, if you don't get the business during a client meeting, the fact is resilience, that is confidence in your abilities, will take you back up to the surface again, and you try again. But if you're not resilient, see, one defeat kills you forever. Mm-hmm. So instead of saying, I didn't get the sale at that time, I didn't finish that particular race, what you say is, I'm a lousy marketer, I'm a lousy athlete. And that's wrong. You're attacking your character instead of situationally saying, that one didn't work. Conversely, I talk about this in Maverick, when you have a success, you shouldn't say, I was successful, I finished that race, or I got that sale. What you say is, I am becoming a darn good athlete, and I'm an excellent marketer. When it's positive, you make it about your character. And just by way of brief digression, it's very important in raising kids.
So there's a lot of people who give up the moment it's hard. And I think that the reason people want to give up the moment something is difficult is because of their fear of failure. And I know you talk about losing your fear of failure in the book. What are 2 things that entrepreneurs can do to get over their fear of failure, especially during a time when a lot of the things that people do are online, and so they are perceived as being highly more visible than maybe they really are?
Well, if you want two things, I'll give you them. There are probably four or five, but here are two that I think work really well. Number one is that you can't change anything without knowing its cause. So when you say fear of failure, you have to say, what am I really afraid of? And what most people are afraid of is humiliation. They're afraid of rejection. They're afraid of somebody saying, you failed. So it's an ego thing. So if you strengthen your ego, and if you fail, you don't care. You know, after all, in these times, if you're not failing, you're not trying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, failure is endemic to entrepreneurialism. So once you recognize that failure is part of the drill, that fear will go away. But you have to recognize that cause and deal with it. The second thing is that life's about success, not perfection. And whether we're immediately visible and we're using technology or we're not, we have this inculcated belief that we are supposed to be perfect. I've talked to people who come off a stage and their smile sheets don't say 10s, they say 9.4, and they go, you know, ballistic. My feeling is if I get high marks on smile sheets, I haven't done my job, because my job is to provoke people, to tick them off. You know, I'm not interested in being loved. I'm interested in the buyer giving me money. So if you focus on success, you'll be very healthy. If you focus on perfection, you got a really long day ahead of you.
Yeah, it's true. Perfectionism is a dream killer.
Perfection kills excellence.
Mm-hmm. That's what I always say to my clients is strive for excellence, not perfection, because perfection is just not achievable. And perfection stops people from even trying because they don't believe they can be perfect at something, so they don't even try.
The really insidious nature of perfection is that you can never win enough. So in other words, excuse me, in other words, you achieve a certain amount in sales and someone says, that was terrific. Of course, it didn't break the record set 3 years ago. You do something in school and somebody says, wow, congratulations. Of course, your sister did even better. If you strive for perfection, you're striving for something that will never, ever occur. No airplane ride you take, no car you drive, no meal you eat is ever perfect. We live in a world of imperfection, so get used to it.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about managing expectations. So you quit your job many years ago, almost centuries ago. Kidding.
Thank you. I was guessing, you know, with your story before, I said, well, she must have been 9 years old.
So how long did it take you to attain the type of success that you wanted when you first started?
Okay, so that's a dangerous question because I did not have a success goal. What my goal was, I wanted to continue to lead a life that was full of fun and challenge and take care of my family. And I wanted that to grow as conditions warranted and allowed. So I never had a financial goal. I never had a sort of a lifestyle goal. And in fact, if anyone asked me years ago what your aspirations would be, it would never be what I have today. I mean, I lead, and I am fully appreciative of this, I lead a very rarefied life that most people, you know, will only dream about. So I think that goals like business plans are killers, because if you hit the goal, you probably should have done even better, but you stop there. And if you don't meet the goal, you consider yourself a failure. And so if your goal is $1 million, just for example, and you do 750,000, that's a good year for a lot of people. But you say, well, I missed my goal by 25% or whatever it is. So I didn't have those kinds of goals, except I wanted to maximize my pleasure and enjoyment in life and family. And that's what I still strive to do, because I'm not smart enough to tell you what's around the next bend. And 75% of my income today comes from things that didn't exist 3 years ago. And that to me is thrilling.
So if somebody is starting their business or they're struggling in their business, let's say, and maybe they're not really struggling, but let's say they've hit the six-figure mark, but they're stuck at $100,000, or they are struggling to earn a living from being self-employed. There are a lot of people out there that are in that situation. What advice would you give them?
Well, I would tell them to reinvent themselves. And that's, I don't mean that as elaborately as it might sound. What I mean is this: identify what you are absolutely passionate about doing. What really lights your fire? What are you passionate about? And secondly, what are you great at? And you combine those two things, what you're great at and passionate about, and that should be your career. Too many people chase money. And I don't get passionate about money. I mean, if you accept my belief that wealth is discretionary time, which means that the more I can control my time, the wealthier I am. A lot of people erode their wealth by chasing money, working 12-hour days and 6-day weeks. So I think you have to look at what you're great at and what you're passionate about and build a career around that. And probably these people who are stuck, who you're talking about, haven't done that. They've done something because someone else has told them to do it. You see people who do things on the internet and say, oh, I have to do that. Oh, they're making $1 million. I have to do that. I have to launch this video series and all this kind of stuff. And they're never successful. I call it the Michelangelo Principle, because Michelangelo, according to the stories, carved the David, which is, when you see the David in Milan, it's just astonishing. Or Firenze, I'm sorry, in Firenze. It's an astonishing thing. And he said he carved away everything that didn't look like David. Now, that's not true. It ought to be. Because what you should do is carve away everything that doesn't look like what you love and are great at. And if you can do that successfully, you'll have a wonderful career.
It's easy for people who have money to say not to chase money. When you don't have money, you need money to survive. So how do people earn a decent enough living when they're starting out? Like, it's kind of an oxymoron, right? You start a business because you want to create success. If you don't have a job, you're not making any money. So you chase money because you need enough of it to pay the bills. You need enough of it to live, right?
Right. So you have to survive, and you have to put bread on the table, and you have to feed your family. There's no question about that. And when I was fired, I began, one of the things I did, I'll never forget, was $25 resume reviews. So somebody looking for a job would give me their resume, and for $25, I'd critique it, because I had to get money wherever I could. However, today, I don't do $25 resume reviews. And the reason is this. No matter where you are, you have to have an abundance mentality, not a scarcity mentality. And I know a lot of people today making a lot of money who still have a scarcity mentality. They still think that where they were 12 years ago. They won't pick up a check. They won't give away anything for free. They'll fly coach when they can afford first class. So they'll fly on an 8-hour trip uncomfortable because they don't want to spend an extra $4,000, even though that no longer means anything to them. So a poverty mentality and an abundance mentality isn't about how much money you make. It's about how you think of yourself. And it's fine to scramble and put bread on the table and earn money so your family can eat. But once you do that, then you have to start thinking of the next step. So you go from survive, if you will, my visual aids here, from survive to alive, to arrive, to thrive. And those are the 4 levels I've identified. You can look at Maslow's hierarchy as well. But you have to slam those doors behind you. I call them watertight doors. And once you go from a survival to being alive and having business, you have to slam that door, or you'll always be scrambling for money. Mm-hmm. And, I talk to people today who are making 7 figures who say, Alan, I can make another $4,500 over here. And I tell them, it'll cost you $15,000 to make that $4,500. And they, no, I got to take that money. And they waste their time. So they waste their wealth. So when I was fired, I said to my wife, I'm going to buy two $2,000 suits, and I'm flying first class, and I'm taking limos, not taxis. And my wife said, we have no money. I'm just curious about your intent here. And I said, if I'm going to do 6-figure projects with Fortune 500 companies, with Merck and with Hewlett Packard and with IBM and with JP Morgan Chase and so on, I can't arrive feeling bad about myself. I can't arrive in a rumpled suit or a frayed collar or perspired or having been lost in a rental car. And believe me, this is a small investment compared to what it will turn out to be. And I was exactly right. That's an abundance mentality. So that's how you escape, if you will, from the legitimate need you point out to put food on the table to go into the next level and the next and the next.
Yeah, easier said than done in some cases, but makes sense.
I would disagree with you in this respect. I've been working with people. I've been coaching people for 30 years. And while it's easy to describe, it's not all that hard to do if you match your behaviors to what you believe needs to happen. But this is an emotional kind of growth. So you can intellectualize it, but emotionally you have to buy that expensive suit, Emotionally, you have to sit across from the buyer believing you're a peer. If you can't do that emotionally, then you're right. Then that's a long haul.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about how do people start? Because if you've never thought that way, there's got to be some things that you can do to start. I remember buying my first business class ticket on a flight. to a conference I was speaking at, and it was a defining moment for me because I had only ever flown first class when I got upgraded by the airline. I had never actually spent the money on myself before. And now it's really hard not to do that because emotionally, I like how I feel when I travel that way. I'm not stressed. I arrive feeling good. I enjoy the experience so much more. But it's taking that first step that is the hardest.
Well, it is for anything. I mean, it is for learning to paint or driving a car the first time or riding a horse the first time, whatever it is, trying a new food. But what happened after you did that? You said to yourself, okay, I'm not broke.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of pleasant. Didn't kill me. I don't feel ashamed. And so you did it again.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole trick is getting somebody who can coach you or help you do that thing the first time. And the reason for Million Dollar Maverick is, people said to me, you should write your memoirs. You've had some life here. My wife said, don't do that. That's self-indulgent. I said, okay. But then what was recommended was, why don't you write about the lessons you learned in your life as you grew that you applied to being successful? And everybody was in favor of that. So that's what Maverick's about. It's about from when I was in school originally to the things I learned accidentally, but I began to apply on a regular basis, to things I then began to learn deliberately and I applied on a regular basis, and right to this day when I'm still learning. And those are the things that I think address the issue you raised, which is, how do I do this the first time? How do I get started? I have techniques in there that help you do that, not threatening, but highly effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to this book. You've got a lot. I love that you talk about influence and you talk about critical thinking skills and you share all of your lessons. I think it's going to be a fantastic book. And I know one of the things that you're doing is you are giving away some special offers when people buy bulk orders of this book, as well as when they buy bulk orders of Million Dollar Consulting, which is also coming out on the heels of Million Dollar Maverick. So have you had any bulk orders yet?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we don't launch the offers through your kind help here until tomorrow or a few days after. We're just about to do it. But I was in Boston last week doing a workshop, and I mentioned this just off the cuff. I had a full house, 40 people. And one person immediately said, I'll take 100 books. And I said, which one? He said, I don't care. I'll take 100 books because I offered to spend a day helping to improve his entrepreneurial skills in a group.
Mm-hmm.
So my offer is anybody who buys 100 copies of Maverick or Million Dollar Consulting, which is the 5th edition, I'll put together in a convenient date and time and place, and I'll spend a day with them, helping them be better coaches or consultants or entrepreneurs or whatever they like. And the books are bought at cost. So 100 books is going to be somewhere around $1,200. There's no other fee.
It's awesome. It's a really, really, really great deal.
Yeah.
I know that you can also buy a huge number of books and get into your coaching program and spend time with you at your home, learning privately with you as well. So can you talk a little bit about what you would advise people to do with bulk orders of books? Because I'm sure the number one thing that people are thinking is, well, what the heck am I going to do with 100 or 500 or 1,000 copies of your book?
Right. You have a lot of
I'm not a bookstore.
So, but you're right. You have the option to attend some of my workshops, have private coaching, spend a long time, 9 months in coaching with me and so forth. So the offers range from about $500 in benefits to about $20,000 in benefits, depending on the purchase. But here's what you do with the books. If you buy bulk books, you give them out to clients. You help get in the door. You help reward people who have been good to you. So for example, when I first started, we're talking when I was fired, I didn't have any books, but I would send people a copy of one of Peter Drucker's books on strategy, because Drucker was my hero. He literally invented strategy, really. And I'd send them the book and I would say, I think chapter 6 will really help you. And the fact I didn't write it didn't matter. That I was thoughtful enough to send it did. And so I used to buy the books at retail, at Barnes and Noble, and send them to clients as I needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here you'll have 100 of my books or whatever bulk amount you buy at cost, which you can use the same way. I think what Alan says in chapter 7 reflects what you and I discussed. So it gives you reinforcement of your point. It expresses a new point of view. And what you do with this is not going to be in any way competitive. Nobody's going to pick up the phone and call me and say, get him down here. They're going to call the person and keep dealing with the person who gave them the book. So if you run a boutique firm and you want to give it to your people, if you're a solo like I am and you want to give it to your prospects and clients, that's what you do with these books.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have to buy 100 books. I mean, right now, if you buy one copy of the book, you can receive a personalized message, and you're also selecting a second book from one of your 64 when people buy a copy, and they can add on a single copy of Million Dollar Consulting for $15 too. So, if you're thinking, hey, I'm not sure what I would do with 100 copies or 1,000 copies of the book, don't think that you can't just buy one book.
Buy 10, 20, whatever. That's exactly right.
Exactly. So if you're interested in buying a copy of Alan's book, you can take a look at all of the different offers that he's put together, as well as read about the book at themilliondollarmaverick.com. And I will have the link for that on this landing page with the video as well. I know that I will be getting a number of copies of the book for some of my colleagues and clients, just because I really respect Alan, and I like the way that he thinks, and I like the way that he calls it, the way he sees it. And, there's really no fluff, Alan, when it comes to you.
Fluffless. That's good to know. Let me just emphasize that it's themilliondollarmaverick.com. The THE is important there, otherwise you'll go to a cowboy site. So themilliondollarmaverick.com. And my site is alanweiss.com, and you can also go there and you'll see assorted videos and backup as well.
It's awesome. So as we wrap up, Alan, is there any one final thought that you would like to leave people with, perhaps around how you think this book can best impact them, or a nugget of wisdom that you would like to pass on?
Well, here's my nugget of wisdom. That's a good question. You said before that we're, because of technology, we're immediately accessible, and every day things are being filmed and taped and so on. I think we're in a world, despite all the technology, or maybe because of it, that's trying to make us all the same every day. There's tremendous normative pressure to adhere to certain norms and to be a certain kind of person. If you don't believe that, look at the evening news where everybody looks alike. No matter where you are in what city. And I think that we need to resist that. I think that people who are truly going to be successful and entrepreneurial need to resist that. And that's why I wrote this book. And Maverick will tell you how you can both be a productive member of society, but be the individual, be the lone wolf, be the person who marches to the music they create themselves. I don't think you find that anywhere else. And that's why I'm so proud of this book.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alan. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate everyone who is watching this. If you got value from this interview, which I can't imagine how you could not, I would appreciate if you would click on one of the share buttons on this page and share it with someone else that you think can benefit from Alan's wisdom. Thanks for watching this, and I'll see you on the next edition of Shop Talk.